I need you to picture this. My wife, Sienna, standing up in the middle of my parents' formal dining room, walking over to my business partner and kissing him. Not a peck, not an accident. A full, passionate kiss that said everything without words. My mother's wine glass hit the marble floor and shattered into 1,000 pieces. But that sound was nothing compared to the silence that followed. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with everything, stay with me, because that slap I gave her, that was just my body reacting. What I did next destroyed both of them in ways they never saw coming. Hit that like button right now and subscribe, because you need to see how this ends. Let me take you back to before that night, before everything exploded. 5 years of marriage. 5 years of waking up next to someone I thought was my soulmate. We had the kind of life people envied. I'm an architect, and I'd built a successful firm with my best friend from college, Brock Ashford. We were brothers, or so I thought. Sienna and I lived in a house I designed specifically for us, every corner filled with memories I thought were real. Everyone called us the perfect couple. She'd show up at my office with lunch, kiss me in front of clients, post about how lucky she was to have me. I was respected in my field, my business was growing, and I'd just landed the biggest contract of my career. Life was exactly where I wanted it to be. But here's the thing about betrayal. The signs are always there. You just don't want to see them. Late nights at the gym that turned into later nights with friends. Her phone face down on every surface. The way she'd pull away when I tried to hold her, claiming she was tired or stressed. New lingerie that I never saw her wear. Perfume I didn't recognize. I told myself I was being paranoid, that successful couples went through phases. I needed to trust her. Trust. That word makes me sick now. The annual Reed family dinner was a tradition my parents took seriously. Formal attire, their estate, the whole family together to celebrate another year of success and unity. This year, Sienna insisted we invite Brock. She said he'd been lonely since his divorce, that he needed family around him. I thought it was sweet. I actually thought my wife was being compassionate. So there we were, sitting around that long mahogany table. My father at the head, my mother to his right, my younger sister Vanessa across from me, Brock beside her, and Sienna next to me. The chandelier above us cost more than most people's cars, crystal and gold catching the light. My father had just opened a bottle of wine from the year I was born, talking about legacy and loyalty, about how the bonds we build are what define us. Sienna kept fidgeting with her napkin. She'd worn this red dress that seemed too formal, even for this dinner, and her perfume was so strong it made my head hurt. I remember noticing her leg bouncing under the table. The way she kept glancing at Brock. I thought she was nervous about the dinner, about impressing my parents. I was so stupid. We were on desert when it happened. My father stood up, raising his glass, going on about family being everything, about trust being the foundation of all relationships. The irony wasn't lost on me later. Mid-sentence, Sienna pushed back her chair. The sound scraped against the hardwood floor, and everyone looked at her. She didn't look at me. She walked around the table to where Brock was sitting, and he stood up like he'd been waiting for this moment. Then she kissed him. In front of my parents, in front of my sister, in front of me. It wasn't a mistake or a slip. It was a declaration. When she finally pulled back, my mother's wine glass was already falling, the red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. My sister's hand was over her mouth. My father's face had gone completely white. And Sienna, she looked right at me and said, "I'm sorry, Callum, but I can't pretend anymore. I love Brock. I've loved him for 2 years. 2 years. While I was building our life, she was destroying it." My hand moved before my brain caught up. The slap echoed through that massive dining room like a gunshot. Sienna's head snapped to the side, her hand flying to her cheek. For a second, I saw shock in her eyes, like she hadn't expected me to react at all. Maybe she thought I'd just sit there and take it. Brock jumped up, playing the hero. "Don't you dare touch her." He shouted like he had any right to protect her from me. My father's voice cut through the chaos. "Get out. Both of you. Get out of my house. I'll never forget the way my mother was crying. Or how my sister just sat there frozen, or the look of disappointment on my father's face. Not disappointment in them. In me, for bringing these people into his home. Brock put his arm around Sienna like he'd won some prize, and they walked out together. I stood there watching the door close behind them, feeling absolutely nothing. That numbness was worse than the anger. I drove home in complete silence. The house felt different the moment I walked in. Every room I passed through felt like a crime scene, and I was finally seeing the evidence I'd been blind to for 2 years. 2 years. That number kept echoing in my head. I wandered from room to room like a ghost, seeing everything differently now. The couch where she'd sit texting while I talked about my day. The kitchen where she'd claim she was too tired to eat together. Our bedroom. That's where the numbness started cracking. I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared, and I don't know what made me do it, but I opened her nightstand drawer. She'd left in such a hurry, so confident in her dramatic exit, that she'd forgotten something. A journal. Leather-bound, expensive. The kind she'd always carried but never let me see, claiming it was just for grocery lists and appointments. I opened it, and my entire world inverted. Page after page of her handwriting, documenting their affair in detail. The first entry was dated exactly 2 years ago. She wrote about how exciting it was, how alive Brock made her feel, how I was stable but boring. There were entries about their secret trips, about times they'd been together in our bed when I was away on business. But it was one specific entry that changed everything. Brock has a plan she'd written 3 months ago. Once we get full control of the firm, we'll freeze Callum out. He's too trusting to see it coming. He built the business, but he's not smart enough to protect it. By the time he realizes what's happening, we'll own everything. I read that paragraph 5 times. The affair was one thing, but they'd been planning to destroy me professionally too. To steal everything I'd built. That's when the cold calculation set in. The heartbreak crystallized into something else entirely. Something focused. I didn't sleep that night. The moment the sun came up, I went to the office. It was Saturday, the building empty. I had access to everything, and I started digging. Brock had been sloppy, probably because he thought I'd never suspect him. Bank records showed he'd been siphoning small amounts from client accounts, setting up a separate business entity in his name. Email chains revealed he'd been bad-mouthing me to our biggest clients for months, planting seeds that I was unreliable, that the business was really his vision. He'd been systematically poisoning my professional reputation while smiling to my face. I found contracts he'd drafted to steal our client list. Non-compete violations, corporate espionage that went back over a year. Then I checked the security footage. Our office cameras ran 24/7. I found footage of them in my office, after hours, going through my files. In one clip, Sienna was sitting in my chair, and they were laughing. Actually laughing? Brock said something I could read on his lips. He'll never see it coming. I downloaded everything. Every document, every email, every frame of footage. I organized it all into folders with dates and timestamps. Evidence, irrefutable, detailed evidence of everything they'd done. Monday morning, I had 2 appointments. First, a divorce attorney named Helena Cross, a woman with a reputation for being absolutely ruthless. I walked into her office and laid out everything. The affair, the timeline, the journal, the evidence. She actually smiled. "Mr. Reed," she said, "this is the cleanest case I've seen in years. Your prenup has an infidelity clause. She gets nothing." Nothing. That word sounded beautiful. My second appointment was with a business attorney who specialized in corporate fraud. I showed him everything I'd found. The siphoned funds, the stolen client lists, the emails, the security footage. He leaned back in his chair and said 3 words that changed everything. "This is criminal. It's not just a civil matter. Criminal charges. Fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage." Brock wasn't just going to lose. He was going to face jail time. We built a strategy right there. A trap so perfect they'd walk right into it, thinking they'd already won. I was going to let them believe they'd destroyed me, let them get comfortable, let them think I was too broken to fight back. Then I'd show them what real destruction looked like. I started the performance of my life. I sent Sienna apologetic texts. Pathetic messages about how I understood, how I wasn't enough for her, how I just wanted this to be over quickly. She ate it up. Her responses were cold but relieved, like she'd expected a fight and was grateful I was rolling over. I agreed to mediation, showed up looking exhausted and defeated. In those sessions, they sat across from me holding hands, practically glowing with victory. Their demands were insane. The house I'd designed. Half the business I'd built. Alimony that would cripple me financially. And I just nodded. "Whatever you want," I said, my voice hollow. "I just want peace." Sienna actually looked smug. Brock had this satisfied smirk, leaning back in his chair like a king on his throne. At one point, he reached across the table and patted my shoulder. "You'll be fine, buddy. You're resilient. You'll bounce back." I wanted to break his hand. Instead, I just nodded weakly. My sister called me after the second mediation session, furious. "What are you doing?" She demanded. "You're just giving them everything. Dad is worried sick. Mom won't stop crying. Why are you acting so pathetic?" I told her to trust me. Just trust me and wait. The hardest part was watching them celebrate. I'd see their social media posts. Pictures of them at expensive restaurants, her wearing jewelry I knew Brock couldn't actually afford yet. Captions about new beginnings and real love. Our mutual friends were confused, reaching out to me, and I played the heartbroken husband perfectly. Let them think I was broken. Let them think they'd won. Then came the court date. Mediation had failed, and now we were moving to formal proceedings. Sienna and Brock walked into that courtroom like they owned it. She wore a designer suit. He had this confident stride. They were dressed for victory, ready to watch me sign my life away. My attorney stood up, and the temperature in the room changed. She presented the evidence methodically. The journal entries read aloud in Sienna's own handwriting. The timeline of the affair. The security footage played on screens for everyone to see. Financial records showing Brock's theft. Email chains proving the conspiracy. The judge's face hardened with each piece of evidence. I watched Sienna's confidence drain in real time. Her face went pale, then red. Brock started sweating, his leg bouncing frantically under the table. Their attorney looked blindsided, shuffling papers uselessly. The judge looked at Sienna with pure disgust. "Mrs. Reed, you made your choice at that dinner table. The prenuptial agreement is clear and will be enforced in full. You will receive nothing from this marriage. Not the house, not financial support, nothing." Sienna's mouth fell open. She turned to Brock, her voice rising. "You said there was no prenup. You said we'd be fine." He tried to calm her down, but she was spiraling, screaming at him in open court. Then the judge turned to Brock. "Mr. Ashford, based on the evidence presented, I'm forwarding this matter to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution." Brock tried to stand, tried to leave. The bailiff's hand on his shoulder sat him back down. Criminal charges. Corporate fraud, embezzlement, potential jail time. His face went absolutely white. I sat there, expressionless, watching their world collapse in real time. The news spread like wildfire. In our industry, in our social circle, everyone knew within 48 hours. I released a carefully worded statement to all our clients, explaining that my business partner had engaged in fraudulent activities and was no longer with the firm. I didn't have to say much. The court records were public. People connected the dots themselves. Every single client stayed with me. More than that, they respected how I'd handled it. Professional, clean, no drama on my end. Brock's reputation was obliterated overnight. The man who'd planned to steal my business couldn't get a job anywhere in the industry. His name became toxic. Sienna's fall was different, but just as complete. She lost everything social. The friends she thought were hers. They were our friends, and they chose me. Her own family cut her off. They'd loved me, treated me like a son, and she'd humiliated me publicly. Her mother called me to apologize, crying. Her father told me I'd always be welcome in their home. Sienna wasn't. I started seeing posts from her on social media, desperate things about true love and following your heart. The comments were brutal. People she'd known for years calling her out, friends telling their own stories of how she'd betrayed them too. She deleted her accounts within a week. I saw her once, about a month after the court case, at a coffee shop downtown. She was alone, and she looked like she'd aged 5 years. She saw me, and for a moment, I thought she might approach. I looked right through her like she was invisible and walked past. The woman who'd kissed another man in front of my family couldn't even get me to acknowledge her existence. Brock's criminal case moved forward faster than I expected. With all the evidence, his attorney advised him to take a plea deal. I attended the sentencing hearing. 18 months in prison, full restitution of stolen funds, banned from holding any corporate position for 10 years. His family, wealthy and prominent in the community, publicly disowned him. They released a statement saying they couldn't support his actions and needed to protect their reputation. The business he'd tried to start with my clients collapsed before it even launched. No one would work with him. Former clients sued him for breach of contract. He looked across the courtroom at me during sentencing, and I saw it. Complete destruction. The man who'd been my best friend, who'd planned to take everything from me, had nothing left. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger. Just cold, empty closure. 6 months passed. My business doubled in size. Turns out, when you remove a partner who was actively sabotaging you, things improve dramatically. I hired new people, expanded into markets we'd never considered, and my reputation in the industry reached new heights. People respected not just my work, but how I'd handled the betrayal. My family and I grew closer than we'd ever been. Sunday dinners at my parents' house became sacred again. My sister told me she was proud of how I'd handled everything. I'd shown real strength by staying calm and strategic instead of emotional and reactive. My father, who rarely gave compliments, told me I'd become the man he'd always hoped I'd be. Then Sienna showed up at my new office. Security called me asking if they should send her away. I was curious, so I said to let her up. She looked terrible. Older, worn down, desperate. She was working retail, barely making rent. Brock had dumped her from prison, blamed her for everything in a letter his attorney sent. She had nothing and no one. She stood in my office doorway, looking at the success surrounding me, and started crying. I made a mistake, Callum. The biggest mistake of my life. I was stupid and selfish, and I threw away everything real for something that was just fantasy. Please, let me make it right. She actually reached for my hand. I pulled it back like she was diseased. You made your choice at my parents' dinner table, I said, my voice flat. That kiss ended everything. You don't get to come back from that. You don't get to come back from any of it. I called security. They escorted her out while she begged. I watched through the glass wall as she stood on the sidewalk, looking up at my office, realizing that the life she could have had was gone forever. If this story showed you that karma is real, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories of justice and revenge. And comment below, what would you have done? Thanks for watching, and remember, loyalty always wins in the end.